Well, I think that you can't decide that they're all coming from the same reason. I mean, for those that believe that they're pursuing, however misguided, a cause for justice, then of course you try and deal with the justice, you try and deal with the cause. And that of course includes, as I said earlier, the resolution of the Palestinian issue.
If they perceive a world in which there's going to be justice, particularly in the current situation, we're talking about justice in the Middle East, if they see that there's a bit of humility about the major superpower and sharing the world's resources, and a law that applies to the rich and the poor and the politically respectable and the others in the same way, I think this will do an enormous amount to defuse the present passion for people, non-state actors, to take what they would call military action. So I think there's certainly things to be done.
If we look to the beginnings of the al-Qaeda network in Afghanistan, what we find is that Muslims from all over the world came to help defend the people of Afghanistan when Russia invaded. But when Russia withdrew from Afghanistan, the acts of violence against the Soviet Union stopped. The warriors did not carry on fighting against the Soviet Union, even though it was an atheist, communist, and anti-Muslim country in their eyes. The legitimate grievance had been resolved, and therefore the violence ended. So there is some evidence from the history of al-Qaeda that the acts of violence may be reduced and even stopped when the legitimate grievances are addressed.
Michael Scheuer served in the CIA for 22 years. He headed the Bin Laden task force in the CIA's Counter-Terrorism Center from 1996 to 1999. Scheuer has written 2 books about the war on terrorism, Through Our Enemy's Eyes and Imperial Hubris, Why the West is Losing the War on Terror. Scheuer disagrees vigorously with those who say that Osama bin Laden has no negotiable political demands. The CIA's bin Laden expert argues that al-Qaeda actually has clear, focused, limited, and widely popular foreign policy goals. Before the invasion of Iraq, Scheuer wrote, "How will al-Qaeda recognize victory? Easy, by forcing drastic changes in US foreign policy. When US and British forces evacuate Saudi Arabia and the rest of the Arabian Peninsula, when the United States has terminated all aid to Israel, and when the US and UN embargoes on Iraq are lifted." To these goals, one might now add the ending of the US-UK occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan. According to Scheuer, bin Laden is out to drastically alter US and Western policies toward the Islamic world, not necessarily to destroy America, much less its freedoms and liberties. He is a practical warrior, not an apocalyptic terrorist in search of Armageddon. Scheuer wrote while still a serving CIA officer, "Bin Laden has been precise in telling America the reasons he is waging war on us. None of the reasons have anything to do with our freedom, liberty, and democracy, but have everything to do with US policies and actions in the Muslim world." After the 11th of September, bin Laden said, "Just as they are killing us, we have to kill them, so there will be a balance of terror. We will do as they do. If they kill our women and innocent people, we will kill their women and innocent people until they stop." Intervening in the closing days of the 2004 presidential election, bin Laden told the American people, "Your security does not lie in the hands of Kerry, Bush, or al-Qaeda. Your security is in your own hands. Any nation that does not attack us will not be attacked." Underlying these demands are legitimate grievances against the West. These are immoral policies which should be reversed because they are wrong. It so happens that reversing these immoral policies would drain away most, if not all, of the hatred which fuels al-Qaeda. This is how we can stop bin Laden. War, retaliation, and violence simply add to his appeal.
Understanding why people carry out acts of terrorism is not the same as justifying it. There is no justification for the attacks which happened on September the 11th, for example. What happened in Palestine does not justify what happened in New York. What happened in Iraq under sanctions and war cannot justify what happened in Madrid. But if we want to stop September 11th happening in the future, then we have to understand the motivations of those who volunteer to be suicide hijackers, those who volunteer to plant bombs in the rush hour. It's only by reducing the legitimate grievances which motivate those people that we can actually reduce the risk of massive terrorist attacks. That is true counter-terrorism.
Our second goal is to prevent regimes that sponsor terror from threatening America or our friends and allies with weapons of mass destruction. By seeking weapons of mass destruction, these regimes pose a grave and growing danger. They could provide these arms to terrorists, giving them the means to match their hatred. They could attack our allies or attempt to blackmail the United States.
At the moment, I accept fully that the association between the two is loose, but it is hardening. And the possibility of the two coming together, of terrorist groups in possession of weapons of mass destruction, even of a so-called dirty radiological bomb, is now, in my judgment, a real and present danger to this country, to Britain, to our national security.
Western governments also have weapons of mass destruction. Britain has 192 nuclear warheads carried by Trident nuclear submarines. The United States has over 8,000 nuclear warheads under its command. Every British and every US government since the Second World War has reserved the right to use nuclear weapons first.
Of course, no government can ever say no first strike, because once you say that, they're of no value.
Other countries are afraid of the nuclear weapon states. They want to acquire chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons, partly in order to deter us. If we want to stop these weapons spreading, we're all going to have to give them up.